Contact high. You spend an hour with someone who is genuinely excited about something, a project, an idea. It doesn't even matter what. By the time you leave, you feel it too. Not just interested, actually energized. Like some of whatever they were running on got into you without your noticing. You came in neutral and you're leaving lit up, and you're not entirely sure what just happened. This is sometimes called a contact high. The experience of absorbing someone else's emotional state so completely that it becomes temporarily your own. What's happening underneath it is neurological. Mirror neurons fire in response to observed emotional states. Your nervous system models what the other person is feeling, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a physical simulation. You don't just understand their excitement. You briefly run it yourself. It works with calm too. Spend enough time with someone genuinely at ease, and something in you starts to follow. Some people are better transmitters than others, and some conversations carry a charge that changes you just by being inside them. You don't always leave a person exactly the same way you arrived. Sometimes you leave considerably better. Emotional contagion. There's someone in your life who you always feel slightly worse after spending time with. Not because of anything they say exactly, not because of a specific incident you could point to, just a consistent, low-level pattern. You go in fine. You come out heavier, like they transferred something to you that you didn't ask to carry. Emotional contagion is the tendency for emotions to spread between people automatically and below the level of conscious awareness. The transmission happens through micro-expressions, vocal tone, body language, the rhythm of how someone moves through a room. Your nervous system reads all of it in real time and begins to synchronize. You don't decide to absorb their anxiety. Your body just does it. The difficulty is that because the process is automatic, it can be very hard to tell where your mood ends and theirs begins. You think you're feeling something. You might just be standing next to someone who is. And the longer you spend in that person's orbit without noticing, the harder it becomes to separate what's yours from what was handed to you. Awareness is usually the first step toward choosing whose weather you carry. Narcissistic drain. You've had a conversation with someone and afterwards you feel, in a way that's difficult to articulate, emptied out. Not sad, exactly. Not angry. Just used. Like the exchange was calibrated entirely around one person's needs, one person's narrative, one person's version of events, and you were there not as a participant, but as an audience. You gave a great deal. You came away with very little. Narcissistic drain is what happens in sustained proximity to someone with high narcissistic traits. The conversation structure is always the same. Their concerns are the real ones. Their feelings are the important ones. Any attempt to introduce your own needs gets redirected, minimized, or turned into a new opportunity to discuss theirs. What makes it draining, rather than simply frustrating, is the effort it requires. You're not just listening. You're constantly monitoring and managing your responses to keep things stable. The emptiness afterward is data. It's your nervous system telling you the exchange was not reciprocal. It's worth listening to, even if in the moment the dynamic was hard to name. The cognitive load was enormous, and eventually that kind of load adds up. Psychic numbing. Someone tells you about a tragedy involving a single person, and you feel it immediately and deeply. Then someone tells you the same kind of tragedy happened to 1,000 people, and somehow, inexplicably, you feel less. The number is larger, the suffering is larger, but the emotional response is smaller. And you know that's wrong, and you can't do anything about it. This is called psychic numbing, the phenomenon where the emotional impact of suffering does not scale with its size. The psychologist Paul Slovic found that our capacity for empathy is effectively calibrated for individuals, not groups. One face, one story, one name, and your full emotional system engages. A crowd of suffering becomes an abstraction. And abstractions don't move us the way people do. It's not cruelty. It's a limitation of the architecture. The human empathy system evolved in small face-to-face communities and was never designed to process suffering at scale. This is why a single photograph changes history and a statistic doesn't. The mind responds to what it can make human. The individual story is the door it knows how to open. Mirroring compulsion. You sit down with someone, And within a few minutes, without choosing to, you've adjusted. Your posture has shifted toward theirs. Your speech has slowed or quickened to match their rhythm. You've picked up a word they used, a phrase, a way of framing something. By the end of the conversation, you're laughing at the same frequency and leaning in the same direction. It happened completely automatically. This is the chameleon effect, named by psychologists Chartrand and Barg in 1999. The automatic tendency to mimic the behavior, mannerisms, and speech patterns of the people around you. It operates almost entirely outside conscious awareness. Synchrony signals safety, belonging, alignment. When two people mirror each other, both nervous systems register it as a connection. The effect is strongest in people who are high in empathy. For some people, though, it goes further than social lubrication. It becomes an identity-level response to others that leaves them unsure which thoughts and opinions are actually their own. The mirroring was never the problem. The problem is when there's nothing underneath it to return to, when everyone else has gone home. Ambient anxiety. Nothing specific has happened. There's no identifiable threat, no immediate source of danger. And yet, in the presence of a particular person, something in you is quietly on. A background alertness, a readiness that doesn't have a clear object. Like your body has registered something your mind hasn't caught up with yet. You can't point to a reason. The feeling doesn't care. Ambient anxiety is the experience of low-level, non-specific unease in response to another person's presence. It's different from disliking someone. You might like them perfectly well at a conscious level. The anxiety operates below that, in a register your nervous system accesses before your thoughts do. Often it's picking up something real, a subtle incongruence between what someone says and how they hold their body. A history of unpredictability your memory has filed as a threat signal. Your body reads people faster than your mind does, and it keeps the score more honestly. When something in you is quietly on around a particular person, it's worth asking what it knows that you haven't yet decided to acknowledge. The body registered it first. It usually does. The ick. It can arrive at almost any point. Sometimes early, sometimes after months. One moment you're attracted to someone and everything is fine. And then something happens. A gesture, a sound, a moment of neediness or overconfidence, or the specific way they laugh. And something switches. Not gradually, almost instantly. The attraction doesn't just decrease, it inverts. And once it arrives, it is almost impossible to undo. The ick has become common shorthand for this experience, but the psychology underneath it is interesting. In some cases, it's a genuine compatibility signal, a moment of unguarded behavior that reveals something actually misaligned. The attraction was based on a projected version of the person, and a glimpse of the real one changes the calculation. In other cases, the trigger is something minor, objectively harmless, sometimes even endearing in a different context. What's shifting in those cases isn't really about them. It's about the intimacy itself. When someone gets close enough to be seen clearly, the mind sometimes manufactures a reason to step back. The ick can be information. It can also be avoidance of wearing the costume of discernment. From the inside, they feel exactly the same. Idealization collapse. There's a version of someone you build before you know them well, assembled from early impressions, from what they choose to show you, from the gaps your imagination fills in with whatever it most wants to find there. The version is usually better than the real one, not because you're naive, because the mind, when it wants someone, is extraordinarily creative about completing the picture. And then, at some point, reality starts showing through. Enough small moments of ordinariness, enough glimpses of the actual person rather than the projected one, and the image begins to slip. The gap between who you thought they were and who they actually are becomes visible. And the loss of that projected version, which was never real, can feel surprisingly like grief. This is an idealization collapse. The adjustment that happens when the constructed image gives way to the actual one. The grief is real, even when the loss isn't. You're not mourning the person. You're mourning the version of them that existed only in you. And that version, however constructed, was something you genuinely loved. Most relationships have to survive this moment to become real ones.